Hi, this is Irish Eyes True Crime. Hi everyone, welcome back to Irish Eyes True Crime. Today we're going to continue with the coverage of the inquest of Nicola Bulley. I'd just like to start by saying that sometimes experts can get things wrong. And sometimes if these experts get things wrong, it can be the cause of a loss of life or the cause of criminals or murderers getting away with actions they should never have got away with. I'd like to show you some times where this has happened and the experts got it wrong. Now, I can understand human error, but as I said already, it can cost somebody their life, or people can get away with stuff, including murder. This is double murderer Ian Stewart, who, after murdering his first wife, went on to murder his second wife. In 2010, Diane Stewart, then aged 47, suddenly died. Ian managed to convince friends, family, and neighbours that she had collapsed and suffered an epileptic fit. Ian also told police and emergency services that he thought his wife had an epileptic fit. So police didn't find anything suspicious about it. And when it went to the pathologist to do the post-mortem, they didn't do a forensic post-mortem. They just done an ordinary post-mortem. So the pathologist recommended epilepsy as the cause of death. So the coroner then gave his ruling as epilepsy as the cause of death also. Ian Stewart went on then to marry author Helen Bailey. He killed her in their home in 2016. The case prompted investigators to reopen the case into the death of his ex-wife. Physiological changes seen in her brain were put down to an epileptic fit, rather than being a result of suffocation, as investigators would later find. The cause of death was recommended despite no normal telltale signs of an epileptic fit being present, such as tongue biting or injuries from falling onto a concrete patio, as Ian Stewart had claimed. Speaking during Stewart's trial, an expert said Miss Stewart's chances of suffering a fatal seizure were 1 in 100,000, as she had not suffered a fit for 18 years and took medication to control her epilepsy. When they reopened the case, they found that he did in fact murder his first wife. Police, pathologist, and coroner all got it wrong. Author Helen Bailey's family say detectives gave her psychopath fiancé a free pass to murder her 6 years after he smothered his first wife. Family of tragic man backs law to stop police avoiding disciplinary action. Kevin MacLeod was 24 when he was found dead in the water at Wick Harbour in February 1997, having suffered massive internal injuries consistent with a severe beating. The family of a man who suffered a violent death 26 years ago have backed proposed laws to stop police officers avoiding disciplinary proceedings by resigning. Twice since then, his family have had complaints pending about senior police officers, the second being Police Scotland's second chief constable, Phil Gormley, but both walked away from proceedings by quitting. Now Joe Farrell, who in August will become the National Force's fourth chief, will be asked to prepare a code of ethics for policing in Scotland should the bill, moved by Justice Secretary Angela Constant, pass into law. In an exclusive article for The Record today, the Minister sets out why she believes change is needed, despite resistance from the Scottish Police Federation, which represents the vast majority of Scotland's 16,600 officers. She says the Police Ethics, Conduct and Scrutiny Scotland Bill would establish new powers to prevent officers guilty of gross misconduct from being reapplied in policing. It would also ensure officers were no longer able to avoid disciplinary proceedings by resigning. These arrangements would be underpinned by placing in statute the Code of Ethics prepared by the Chief, which sets out expectations of police behaviour. Constance added, "This is an important piece of legislation. It delivers the majority of the remaining recommendations made by Independent Review of Policing, led by the former Lord Advocate Dame Eilish Angeloni, to ensure our safeguards are robust." In 2020, Dame Eilish called for increased transparency and accountability in the complaints process and recommended that disciplinary proceedings should continue regardless of resignation or retirement. Figures published earlier this year revealed 47 officers in Scotland had resigned or retired during misconduct proceedings against them since 2019. In that time, there have been 332 allegations of gross misconduct and 1,182 misconduct complaints. Kevin's uncle, Alan MacLeod, says his family are not only seeking justice after 26 years, they are still looking for answers to fairly simple questions. He believes they would have had most of the answers in 2003 had Northern Constabulary's Deputy Chief Constable Keith Cullen not quit ahead of disciplinary proceedings. He was facing an inquiry into the way his force dealt with complaints about their handling of Kevin's death, but he retired prior to facing disciplinary action and walked away with a 6-figure lump sum and a substantial annual pension. This family is still fighting for the death of Kevin, and it's ongoing today. There's still more to read up on it. If you want to read up on it, it's very interesting. I think they really messed up in this. Kevin went on a night out with friends and never came home. His injuries were including a burst liver, pancreas and spleen, and a torn aorta. Police tried to say that it happened at the harbour, that he must have fell on something at the harbour. But it was proven that witnesses seen him being assaulted earlier on in the evening, and he had been holding his stomach long before he ever got to the harbour. This is the state pathologist, Dr. Alison Armour, who carried out the post-mortem on Nicola Bulley. Dr. Armour was the first person to give evidence, and she explained that she carried out a post-mortem on February the 21st, 2 days after Nicola's body was found. She said the internal examination found classic signs of asphyxia, a condition arising when the body is deprived of oxygen. By the time she was found, Dr. Armour explained the process of rigor mortis was completed, and flecks and fragments of dirt were found inside Nicola's throat. There was also water found in and around her lungs, and all of these are typical features we see in cases of drowning. Dr. Armour concluded Nikki was alive when she entered the water and gave a cause of death of drowning. Toxicology tests found therapeutic levels of beta blockers, propranolol and painkiller paracetamol. Although there was some ethanol alcohol, the levels were consistent with post-mortem microbial activity, bacteria within the body that produces ethanol after death. Dr. Armour says that in her examination, Nicola's face, particularly her forehead and hair, were covered in mud. She had a wound to the bridge of her nose and eye, but evidence suggests that came post-mortem. Dr. Amore said that Miss Bulley had been discovered caked in mud. Bruises were discovered on her lower limbs, including to the front of her shin and right knee. No signs of asphyxiation or hemorrhage were discovered, and when asked if there was any sign of trauma to the neck, she replied none whatsoever. There were several bruises on her body, including both the front and back of her right arm. Also blood found on her chin. The pathologist described all these bruises around her body as not having contributed to her death. Grass and vegetation found around her foot. My first point I want to make on this is no evidence was given of what type of water, like was it tested against the river water that was found inside her lungs and all that? Was it the same water? I'm sure that's what a lot of us were waiting to hear. Flecks and fragments of dirt was found inside her throat, and I wondered then if she was, as they say, inhaling water, where did the dirt and fragments come from? Like, was that like from the bottom of the river? Did she drown right at the bottom, inhale that water, and the dirt sucked up? Or was she held down to the bottom of water, and that's how the dirt and fragments got inside her throat? No alcohol was found in her system. After the police making such a big deal about alcohol and the menopause, it had nothing to do with Nicola's disappearance, but they were under the illusion all the time that it did play a part in her disappearance. The pathologist said that by the time Nicola was found, that rigor mortis had already been finalised. We know from our research that when a body is removed from the cold water, that decomposition starts straight away, and it's rapid after that. But yet it took 2 days before the pathologist started her exam on Nicola. The pathologist gave the reason for the damage to Nicola's eye and bridge of her nose as happening post-mortem. But everything else, with regards to bruising to the front and back of her body, the blood on her chin, there was no explanation given to that, and whether it happened post-mortem or before Nicola died. The pathologist said that Nicola's hair, face and body was covered in mud. Now, I wondered how that could be, as Jason Rothwell, the guy that found her, said that Nicola was floating up or down the river. So that would wash any mud off Nicola's body. As they say that it's tidal where she was found, so you would think that'd wash any mud off her. Is that why Jason's statement wasn't given as evidence in the inquest? I did think about, could the mud have happened while they were removing her body from the water? But then we've all seen the video that Curtis had taken, and she was put in a body bag in the water. So regardless what way she was dragged up that bank that we know, no mud would have been able to contact her body as she was in a bag. They gave no evidence of how she was covered in this mud. Like if they had have said, oh, it was from her lying on the bed of the river, but then could that be the reason they didn't look for Peter Falden's evidence of the riverbed, where he has the evidence that she wasn't on the riverbed? Then you have the fact that grass and vegetation was around her foot. Now, an explanation could be that she was caught on something in the river by her foot. But that wouldn't explain how they didn't find her if she was actually held onto something. Sure, that would have made it easier for them to find her because she wasn't staying going out in the river. She was caught up in that thing. And we know police have searched all along the riverbanks. And plus, the dogs didn't smell her either. So, how is it possible that they didn't find her? It makes me think back to the video footage that Curtis Media took of the drain. And we remember that, all of us remember that, the video of the drain, the tunnel. And the possibility that she could have been placed in that drain and water built up around her if it was closed and sealed, and her being covered in mud and vegetation growing around her foot. So then I was thinking of the way those tunnels work. When they want to keep them clean and clear, they close them up and seal them. So all the water builds up that's running from the fields. And when it has built up and they open it again, which can be seen when Curtis pulls a rope and it opens it, everything will gush out and bring as much as possible out of the drain to keep it clear. It is a possibility that someone went and opened that drain and Nicola's body was dispelled from it. And why her body wasn't found for 23 days of intensive, more than I've ever seen in another case of a disappearance and drowning. Is it just a coincidence that Peter and all his evidence wasn't called into the inquest? And the same with Jason, and his statement wasn't called at the inquest. No evidence of head injury or neck injury relating to Nicola's death was found. It still doesn't rule out the possibility that she was held underwater and that somebody else drowned her, a third party. Even though the pathologist stated there was no evidence of third party, that doesn't mean that a third party wasn't involved. Just because she had no evidence in front of her, it doesn't mean that it hasn't happened before where a person has been drowned but there was no evidence of it, and it's only found out later that it happened that they were drowned by somebody else. Blood was found on her chin, and I'm wondering, I'm sure a lot of us were wondering how blood was found on her chin if tidal water was going up and down, would have been washing her body. So how is blood on her chin? I think the only evidence we can take from this is the pathologist saying that Nicola drowned. I don't think she looked into the possibility of Nicola having drowned somewhere else, as she didn't give evidence of what type of water was found inside of her lungs. I think her view could have been slightly tainted going into the inquest, with the police constantly drumming it down that it was an accident and she fell in at the bench. And if anyone went against the police narrative, that word they've said so many times, narrative, if anyone went against it, they were classed as conspiracy theorists. So guys, I'm going to leave it there for today. Keep an eye out for the next video. And just to let you know, I haven't got time right now to look at the comments, but I will go back and look over every single comment that's in the videos. I'm so interested to find out what you all think of the inquest as well. So goodbye for now. Be safe, be happy. Please like, subscribe and share, as sharing is caring. Thank you.